I'm Todd Eden. I'm out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I have a degree. Ta-da. What happened?
I don't know.
Ta-da, 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 ta-da.
I'll get you the other one until I fix it.
Test, test. Test, test. Okay. It's got a weak wire or something. I actually studied banking and finance, and here I am changing the world in agronomy. And I say that humbly. Test, test. Oh, gotta hold one. I got drug into this. The Lord had a plan for me. He yanked me out of college to help a family-owned business. I got into chemical manufacturing, etc. And after a lot of years, actually 11 years ago, I took something that I visualized and started developing, etc. And so I'm going to kind of tell you a story. I'm going to tell you about all the things I learned, which really truly is changing the world of agronomy. So I make this bold statement about making sense in agronomy, but I'm also fixing things in agronomy on a major scale.
Don't worry, that's not on video, so off the record.
No problem. So I would like to know if we have any of WaterSOLV users here, people who have used our program. So we have one there. Just started. Carlos. Okay, so we have two. So I got into this market. Thank you. I got into this market because I met a guy on the phone, Scott, show your hand, Fagura, and he called me about a year ago, and I never follow up on stuff because I'm so darn busy. But I had a nice conversation with this guy, thought he was pretty smart, and I called him a year later and I go, how come you didn't call me back? Everybody calls me back. He goes, well, I had medical issues and blah, 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 and we started talking. Next thing you know, Scott's got a lot of people that he has put on our program, and I went out and met with some of them, and they have all their theories and philosophies about this and that, and I go, look, I know this business from soup to nuts. I don't know your growing environment, I don't know your carbon environment, but I know what I know, and I know I'm changing the world, and I've been doing it for 13 years across the United States and in Mexico. And so I said, this is what you need to do. Here's your prescription. And if you do it, this is what you're going to see, and this is how long it's going to take. And it started happening. Scott got a whole bunch of people in this region into our fold. And so I get a phone call one day from a guy from one of my dealers in Florida, and he wants me to have a conference call with this guy named Wyatt. Okay, so we have a conference call. Wyatt's a smart guy. I can tell by talking to him. So I'm following up with Wyatt, and he's in New Mexico, and I go, why am I talking to my dealer in Florida, but you're from New Mexico? How did that happen? So anyways, I met Wyatt, do the same thing I do with Scott, tell him what we do, etc. He is a smart guy, and so that's how we met each other and got engaged, etc. Okay? And we've only had this relationship 8 months, would you say? Okay. So Wyatt asked me to come out here, share with you our story. That's why I'm here. I own this company called HCT. There's a reason for that name, but I turned it into Here Comes Terrible because Terrible is my nickname. And terrible is a lot different than trouble, okay? I'm not trouble, I'm just terrible. Okay, so what we do is not hypothetical. It's not, well, it might. Well, it potentially could. What I do is empirically proven. Empirically means I do it across the country in every application. Golf courses, you name it, I got a list. It's scientifically irrefutable. So when I started, I had to go up against universities, professors, PhDs, you name it. What I do is scientifically irrefutable. You cannot prove me wrong scientifically, okay? And then you'll see it. It's visual. You start putting this stuff on ground through water, and you go, wow, my plants are coming to life. And it's accountable. So what do I mean by accountable? I can show you the marbles. I can show you the data in the water. I can show you the data in the soil. I can show you the data in available nutrition. I can show you the data in tissue analyses. Is that crazy? Sounds pretty crazy, right? All right, here we go. So I am prepared for skepticism. because I've dealt with skepticism for 11 years, okay? I am loaded for bear, hunting possum, okay? Everything I do, and here's one of the reasons I do it, because I don't want to buy somebody's pivot. I don't want to kill somebody's crop, right? I don't want to have to replace somebody's golf course green. I don't want to have to buy a nursery's crops. Because I'm writing prescriptions, my patient has to get well. Like doctors, oh well, you know, if they don't get you well, too bad, right? But I have an ongoing business. I have to protect my business, okay? So I do things scientifically so I have foundational basis. Does that make sense? Okay, so you guys face, not just here, but nationwide, you guys face chronic issues. They're chronic across the country. Florida gets 72 inches of rain. They flush salts, right? No, it doesn't happen. Rain flushes salts. No, it doesn't happen. Palm Springs is completely different than Oregon, right? Idaho is completely different than Mississippi or Alabama, right? But they all fight the same problems. I deal with those problems. So your site is unique, your conditions are unique, but your problems are not unique. They're not unique. The proof can be seen in your soil data. The problem is you never have seen your soil data. You go to the lab, you go, give me an analysis, say, oh, here's your water. Say, here's your exchangeables, here's your available nutrition, you're short on the available, throw more on. They never showed you the total composition of your soil. And you're going to be shocked when you see what your soils look like. You're going to be absolutely shocked. And I'm going to get to the details. Okay, raise your hands if any of the following of these images apply to you, please. Black layer or standing water, show of hands. I got a few. Infiltration rate and depth. I got several. Tissue analyses deficient sodium chloride toxicity. Lots of hands, right? Septic water, septic soils, water and soil toxicity. Everybody has that. Everybody raise your hand. It's true, okay? Oxygen deficiency. How do you know you have oxygen deficiency? Somebody tell me.
No microbes.
What's the point? Anybody else?
Stinky soil.
That's a great one.
Compaction, crusting.
Those are all good ones. That's correct. Is there many things that can really survive without oxygen? Your motor can't even run, right?
Rice.
Yeah, they like a noxicity. Okay. Bacteria laden or disease. Fungicides, algicides, etc., right? Reclaimed water, hard water, biotoxic water, okay? In my business, those are all assets, not liabilities. Is that weird? That is weird, okay? Bicarbonate. I heard the story a million times. Bicarbonate. Yeah, it's a monster. It is a monster. It's also the same thing as alkalinity. And who lives on pH? Everybody lives on pH. It's the wrong thing to do, sorry to tell you. Okay? I got berry growers in California that have pH at 4 and they still can't grow berries. There's a reason for it. In an earlier presentation, someone said, at the top of the presentation, they said, why, right? That's what I do. I figure out why. And either there is a solution or there isn't. Blight, dry spots, wet spots. How many wet spots you've seen in a golf course? How many dry spots you've seen at a golf course? Take a divot and it breaks your wrist, right? Where you hit the ball and it's got mud all over it. Bryozoa, algae, fairy ring, dollar spot. I'll keep going. Shells. Anybody got shells in their irrigation system? Come to Arizona. Go to the Diamondbacks or the Rockies spring training field. Go to the White Sox Dodgers spring training field. Shells plugging irrigation systems. Okay? Little zebra mussels, Asiatic mussels in Florida, etc. and these golf courses are having to flush their lines and just spending boatloads of money. What's a shell comprised of? Calcium and a little muscle inside, right? If you dissolve a seashell, you can go down to Bed Bath & Beyond and buy a bag of seashells and go and dissolve it, and you'll find a little microbe left behind after you dissolve the entire seashell. What is that shell? It's calcium. It's fertilizer. Not in the form of shell, right? Okay. So we make water a better solution. That's what we do. We do it through chemistry. City makes water potable for you and I to drink. I make water potable for plants to drink. But it's not the water that I'm making available to the plant. It's just part of the equation. I'm making a healthy, nutrient-rich water. And I didn't include this in my presentation, but it just lingered on my brain this morning. I make water more priceless than rain. And how would you guys like to be able to inject your own rain? Would that be priceless? But there's a reason rain works. And there's a reason that I work better than rain, and I'm going to show you. Okay? So I treat water, but I treat water to make soils work. Okay, we talked about compaction, we talked about cementation, we talked about getting water down, you talked about stinky soils from sulfate reducing bacteria. My roots are its intake. Certainly there's intake from the leaves and the tissues, but my roots are the intake. So you and I are what we eat and drink. Plants are what they drink. That's it. Okay? And they need specific things. They need oxygen. They need nutrition. Yeah, we need biology. But what we don't need is sodium. We don't need bicarbonate tying up all of the nutrients that the plant needs. Okay? And I mentioned before that, rain flushes salts. It doesn't. I'll show you in the data. It doesn't flush salts. And I'm going to show you what it does do, why you get that flush of growth, and why you get the crash. All scientifically. I'm going to show you. So nutritional uptake. I deal with this nutritional uptake and then systems compatibility. So how do I get this drink to the plant? Am I injecting it and am I spraying it through a pivot? Am I in underground emitters? Is it going through emitters? How am I making this water available to the plant? How am I getting it through the soil into that root zone? So when that root zone drinks, it's getting as much nutrition as it can get and the toxins aren't there. Okay? So I mentioned drip, emitters, pivot, corrosion, acid corrosion. Certainly people have experienced that with sulfuric. Okay, our reach and success. The reason I tell you this is not my first rodeo. I used to ride bulls too. I'm nationwide, coast to coast, border to border. So East Coast, West Coast, Mexico, Canada, okay? I write prescriptions for your drinking water wells. I've probably done 55 wells just in New Mexico for cities. They come to me, they give me the data, I write prescriptions, tell them how to do it, what chemistry, soak times, tools, the whole enchilada, okay? I do hundreds of nurseries, I do millions of acres of agriculture. Those were some pretty big grapes, by the way. I don't know where they came from, but they look pretty good. If you've noticed bigger grapes, if you've noticed bigger strawberries, bigger citrus, etc., I'm involved in that. I sell to Driscoll's and Be Sweet and all those people, okay? And why? Why is it better? Well, it's healthier water, it's more nutrient rich, and the plant is now drinking vitamins. And the volume of vitamins allows it to grow like you've never seen it before, okay? And then I do more than 250 golf courses. And if you can imagine guys that have to be on top of their agronomy, right? Green perfect, keep the fairway perfect, talk to the general manager, make sure he complies with the golf pro, make sure all the members are happy. Whew, it's a tough deal, okay? I've got over 250 now. That market's just literally blowing up, and it's across the country. Okay, so I write prescriptions for water, for soil, okay, based on data diagnosis. I sit behind a desk and I look at data, similar data to what you looked at, and I write prescriptions. And they take that medicine and they put it into that water, and plant gets well. How well? Okay, I'm going to show you. So just a little bit about the depth and breadth of me and our technology. I'm registered with the National Sanitation Foundation. I can't deal with potable water systems unless I am registered with the NSF. So the NSF comes in every year, audits our plant, takes samples, audits the samples. I have to be approved. I have to have chain of custody for my chemical from manufacturer and all the raw materials. I can only buy my raw materials from certain suppliers. It's a full chain of custody all the way down to when it goes into a well. Okay, it's a lot of work, but we did it. I'm registered with the California Department of Food and Agriculture. I have products registered with the Organic Materials Research Institute. It's actually called the National Organic Program. Okay, I've done a lot of pretty crazy stuff. I've done work for the U.S. Navy, Los Alamos National Laboratories, National Renewable Energy Lab, Xerox, Digital, et cetera, and that was all involved in descaling pipelines on U.S. warships around the world, and these guys were all based on water treatment for their processed water systems, their heating and cooling and closed loop systems, et cetera. So I really learned a lot about the processes and the chemistry and the biology and the corrosion, et cetera. I've done work for Pepsi-Cola, Motorola. Pepsi-Cola, I used to make conveyor lubricant for them. So you know how they take oils and they'll check metals in the oil to make sure that this oil's better than that oil? Pepsi would do it on the solution that would come off their conveyors to see what the metals were. So they didn't want their conveyors destroyed, right? They're flying, making Pepsi-Cola, right? Home Depot. I invented a shower tub and tile cleaner, went nationwide with Home Depot. Couldn't produce it fast enough. I have a couple US patents, one on chloride, and then one on a control system to manage varying water in these processed water systems. And I'm not trying to tout myself, I'm just trying to give you my depth and breadth of what I do. And then I used to manufacture over 400 chemical products. Okay, mainly like static dissipating floor coatings for the electronics industry, the conveyor lubricant, just tons of stuff. And it's an interesting story on that because I would get formulas from people that send shuttles to the moon, Morton Thiokol, Stauffer Wacker silicones, Roman Haas, huge chemical companies, and the formulas didn't work. And that's where I really cut my teeth in it. I'd get in and I'd talk to the guy who was responsible for this ingredient and that ingredient, and they'd share their wisdom, et cetera. And then I'd process that little recipe, and before you know it, I had the best cherry pie on Thanksgiving than all the moms, right? So I deal with chemistry, but I deal with the processes and procedures. So all forms of agronomy, all forms of water distribution, all forms of equipment, because it's the whole enchilada you need to deal with from soup to nuts. Okay? From yield to how you're going to put something in. Failure is merely a consumption of time and resources. You've got to go in and do it right. And it's a little frustrating in my business because people go, well, I need to clean a well. I go, well, I need these 50 questions answered. 50, it's crazy. Or a golf course, right? I need all this, I don't want to do that. Yeah, but I don't want to write you a prescription unless I do a good diagnosis, right? Because it's a waste of your time, my time, and people aren't going to look favorably at you if you don't succeed in your job and produce. Okay? So it's not just, take this pill and call me in a week if you don't feel better. Okay? That's not my business. My business is your success. Okay? So got a little ahead of myself. Our processes: discovery, prescriptions, chemistry, biology, and physics. And let me elaborate on that. Chemistry, what's my plant drinking? Biology, what's going on? Is it going to be beneficial or detrimental? And then the physics. How are my soils operating physically? Am I getting water down? Am I getting nutrition where it needs to go? Am I dealing with a confining layer in my soil that nobody ever told me about? That's harboring sodium and chloride, and that's why my trees are checking out halfway through the season? Because my roots are finally getting down there? The processes and procedures. I mean, I was involved with Scott, and they go like, trees aren't looking so good. Go take a probe. When's the last time you watered? Well, we skipped that watering. Well, your soils are dry, they need a drink, and the drink has, it's a Monster Energy drink. It has to drink it. Well, how's it going to drink it if there's no water to drink it with, right? So that's just a part of it. And then accountability. So what is accountability? The data. What is happening with the data in the soils? Where's it going? What's it look like? Let me show you a really cool picture. So what do we do that's different? Okay, it's really testing methods. So you guys get water analyses, right? And you look at them and you go, okay. And then you get another analysis, which is your soil, and it says, here's your available nutrition, and here's your exchangeables, okay? And your available is short on this and that. It's there on your exchangeable, but your available for your plant is short, so you need to add these fertilizers. Interesting. So I looked at those reports for years, and they just didn't add up. And by His grace, I was working on the analytical test methods. Now, these are test methods that are EPA sanctioned, the Environmental Protection Agency. And I'm looking at this term called exchangeables, and I'm going, all right, what does that mean? What does exchangeables mean? Because exchangeables is not adding up. Well, exchangeables means that they're going to take lab water, of all things, they're going to take your soil on a 1-to-1 ratio, and they're going to grind them up, okay? And then they're going to let them soak anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. And then they're going to extract the solution. And then they're going to give you the data on that solution. Okay? And so what does that data mean? Well, it means if the exudates of your roots produce the acids they're supposed to produce, this is the nutrition that's going to be available to your plant eventually. I got growers that the roots can't even find water, much less the nutrition. Okay? So what happened was we started looking at soils from a total digestion. So what does that mean? So total digestion is basically the same way that you would analyze a fertilizer. Oh, I'm buying a fertilizer. What am I buying? Well, the government says all you need to know is NPK, right? The N, the P, the K, the 0-0-0. But I want to know everything that's in that soil. If you ask for a fertilizer analysis, what are they going to boil it down with? Nitric acid and hydrogen peroxide. And they're going to say, here's everything that's there. And they're going to lay it out in the data. If you want to check manure, same thing. They're going to break it down the same way. It's called total soil digestion. And this is really important for you. This is really important for you. Because when you do a total soil digestion on your soil, you're going to go, why am I adding these fertilizers that aren't available when I have about $300,000 worth locked up in my soil? Right? What's the problem here? The problem here is that your water is not breaking down all this fertilizer that you added, and what the industry is telling you, well, if it's not available, you need to add it, but what am I doing? I'm loading my soils with fertilizer. Correct? Makes sense? Guys, I have a lab, they'll do the total soil digestion. You go to any lab out here, they'll do a total soil digestion. Do it. You will not believe how much money you have sitting in that soil that's doing what? It's feeding bacteria, the bad bacteria. It's restricting infiltration. It's adding bulk density. It's tying up available nutrition. And it's causing standing water and runoff. And the more standing water and runoff you have, the more water you're going to use. And the less water you're going to provide to your plant. And you're still not making available nutrition. You're not making it. It's accumulating. Okay, I have a solution for that. Let's inject sulfuric acid and add gypsum. Guess what happens? You're adding more calcium, more food source for the bacteria, sulfur and sulfate, Iron's locked up. You're still not making that available nutrition. Now, the first year you use sulfuric or infuric or a sulfur burner, you go like, wow, this is great. Second year, you're going, this ain't working so good. Third year, you're pulling your hair out. I haven't done it. I'm just losing it. Okay? Fourth year, you're looking for some salvation or you're fired and looking for another job. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. Because the acid event created available calcium, available sulfur. It created it. But what the plant didn't drink accumulated in the soil and added more calcium and sulfur. Okay? So then you added more acid again and gypsum, and you left more calcium and sulfur. Before you know it, your soil's gypsum. Okay? And that's scientific research. I think I have that picture in here. I know I do. So we changed these testing methods. What did we change? I'll get into those details. Chemistries. I have proprietary chemistry. Okay? I have an acid. I have a water treatment chemical. I have chemistry that deals with these problems. And I'm probably the only guy on the planet that has a chemical that will directly detoxify sodium. My plants can drink all the sodium it wants and it won't hurt it. Okay? It's a process called protonation. Okay? Never thought I'd be able to predict the outcomes of chemical treatment. So when I fill out the data and I write the prescription, I go, you're going to need a little bit more of this medicine for this amount of time because of your soils. And you guys that spent most of the money trying to feed the nutrition, you got more money in the bank, but it's going to take you longer to break down, convert those fertilizers to nutrition. So you're going to use more chemistry in the beginning. The guys that didn't load their soils with fertilizer, etc., they're going to get quicker results because you can convert that less amount of fertilizer into available nutrition. Okay? Trackability, we can see it in the data. We can see the marbles move. You'll see it in your vegetation. It'll support it from the data and the accountability. And again, as I mentioned, it's all refutable physically, chemically, biologically, and toxicologically. Okay? These aren't necessarily our products, but our categories. New test methods. Okay? Our WaterSOLV chemistry, our well rehab chemistry, our intellectual knowledge, and then how to apply product. That's what we do. We don't sell fertilizer. Okay, we don't sell biologicals. We sell a product that's better than rain. We sell medicine for water. Okay? Just like the city does to you. They use hydrochloric acid. They use phosphates. They use as corrosion inhibitors. They use disinfectant. I'm using acid sequestering agent, and I'm using a biocide, not a disinfectant. Okay? This one I included for you because where does it all start if you're running wells? Wells get sick. And you transfer that sickness through your lines, into your lines, you have line problems, and then you transfer it onto the soil. And I'm going to cover that. I'm going to go fast. Oh, forgot to tell you. So loaded for bear means I have a lot of technical information on here, a lot, but I'm going to blow over that because if you want to get into the technical, go for it. Okay, but I want to give you guys the highlight view. Okay, so I talked about this. We're in wells, all forms of soils, varying water qualities, including dryland farming, all forms of irrigation systems, and all forms of varying environments, from Palm Springs to Florida to Maine to Oregon, Washington, Idaho, etc. I didn't include in this presentation right here in dryland farming, we had the highest protein percentage ever recorded at the mill on dryland farming wheat. And I think somebody, I mentioned that to earlier today, I think kind of the average is like 14 to 18. I think we're at 22 to 24. And grower makes more money, right? I didn't know that.
Depending on the kind of wheat.
Gotcha. And I don't know that either.
Yeah, some want low protein, some want high protein.
Some want low and some want high. Okay. So this is kind of a little chart that we put together our first step is data. What am I dealing with? Second part, that's water and soil. Second part is writing prescription. First phase is remediating soil, making soil work, making available nutrition for the plant, detoxifying, dealing with the bio-waste products. I didn't do that. Then ongoing treatment. So year one, the expense is greater because I'm fixing soils. But what am I doing? I'm harvesting fertilizer you already paid for. So you're actually making more money because you're not spending as much. Okay? And then ongoing treatment, you're not going to use as much of my chemistry. Just plain and simple, you're not going to need it. And then the next one is the analytical data, manage and monitor. So I am going to add fertilizer based on what I have available in my soil. When I start consuming enough amount of it, etc., then I'm going to replenish those amounts. It's all going to be in the data. Sounds good, right? I call that managing the marbles. Plain and simple. Very direct. So these are the products, the testing. I have some spotting chemicals. This is more for calcareous soils. This is more for biological areas. In ag, that might be, a grading that's like this where the water's always collected. This will go more anoxic. This will go more calcareous. Evaporation to dryness, and then the accumulation of the biology and the bacteria and their waste products, and this kind of goes septic. Okay? And I've had problems with that. So all this dissolves really quick, all that doesn't. The water starts going down here, it's not going down there. They have to topically spray here because of the biology. It just is what it is. And then our injectables. WaterSOLV Curative is an acid sequestering agent, and then WaterSOLV BC is an antiseptic, a biocide, and then how are we going to apply this stuff? Okay? So we have a commitment. It's instilled in Wyatt and his team, it's instilled in Scott and his group, it's instilled in everybody who represents our product across the country. If we don't know, we'll say so. It's a no-if policy. We don't do ifs. Okay? So you think your world's really that different, but when I have your data, it's just all factual. Okay? I don't have to say, well, if we do this or if we do that. I don't want to do ifs. You don't want to do ifs. You've got 12 months to make as much money as you can, right? One season. Okay? So ifs is a very expensive word in your world. We need to be on target. Okay? If we haven't already addressed the situation on multiple occasions, you'll know. Because we're going to tell you. If it's a beta, we're going to go into beta. Okay? And I can give you story after story after story. We will take it into the lab and we will see if we can figure it out. And if we can't figure it out, then we're in this beta together. Okay? There's not much we haven't been able to figure it out. Because why? Because I'm dealing with the culprits of water and soil and available nutrition. And I know what the culprits are, and I'm going to show you. Okay. Don't guess, test. And Scott, I got to tip my hat to you. He's a dealer of ours. Scott says, if you don't want to do the test, I don't want to sell you anything. Okay? Because it's not good business. Because otherwise you're throwing it in the wind. Okay? It's not worth it. So we'd rather do the test and help the people that do the test, because then I can write a prescription and then patient's going to get well. Right? You're not going to put an aspirin in your pocket and think it's going to help you, right? You got to take it. Okay. Don't assume. Fertilizer based on data and nutritional demands. Oh, things aren't looking good. Better go throw out some of that calcium phosphate, right? Or that calcium nitrate. They're not looking good. How do you even know that's the right prescription? How do you even know that's the right medicine? Okay, maybe it got warm and you had a bunch of anaerobic bacteria and they're just having a party because they love the warmth. They like to reproduce. You have to throw the right product for the right problem. Otherwise, you're spending money. So gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, and kids, you're fighting the fight because conventional agronomy has its limitations, plain and simple. Nobody has come here and solved the problem. Okay? You fight it, and you fight it physically, biologically. Look, I love carbon, I love humics, I love fulvics, I love a lot of this stuff, but you have to go after the foundational issues, which is cementation, sodium and chloride, natural valence, the anion, cation, plus, minus attraction, and biological wastes. Okay, and I'll tell you exactly what those wastes are. Okay, so that's a lot of those details. Conventional agronomy is not sustainable. You're going to fight the fight, you're going to spend more money. And the more money you spend, then odds are the better crops you're going to have. But the ratio of return on investment is going to go like this, and it's continuing to go like that. And I'm sure you guys have seen that year over year over year. Okay? And it's not necessarily inflation, it's inputs. It's bad soils, lower yields, and you spend more money to fix all this stuff physically, mechanically, and your yields will come up, but the ROI isn't there. Fair enough? Anybody want to call me out on that? Sound familiar? Okay. So consequences year over year that you have probably experienced: more standing water, more runoff, more pests, more disease, more fertilizer, more physical agronomy, more money, more expenses, less production. More water, less ROI. True? Usually? Show of hands? True? All right, thank you. So if hard water is calcium, magnesium, potassium, and phosphate, that's what hard water is. Why don't we refer to it as loaded with macronutrients? Why don't we refer to it as fertilizer? Because it complexes. It's locked up in the soil. I love hard water. I love crappy soils because it's fertilizer. You have to free it. You have to make it as available as sodium. Okay? If reclaimed water is considered biologically compromised, can we use it? Can we make it rewarding and beneficial? City can't. They're spitting it out there, right? Yep. I think with signs. Okay? Your source water, let's go for a swim. Okay? You're not going to swim in your pond water, right? Why not? You'll run through the sprinklers. Right? It's the same stuff. What's wrong with it? It's septic. We're transferring that onto that, and we expect that plant to go, oh, thank you. Thank you. 20-year-old orange juice, and you want me to drink it. Good idea, right? And one of the problems is there's a lot of minerals and metals in here. There's a lot of nutrition in here, but there's also a lot of bacteria. Okay? And we throw that bacteria out on this soil, and the bacteria go, wow, look at all this sulfur and sulfate. Look at all this iron. Look at all this manganese. This is a great, excuse my expression, this is a great shit show. I love it here. And here's the big problem. The minerals and metals don't grow. They're quantitative, but the bacteria grow. And they can grow and reproduce every 15 minutes exponentially. So they can get really bad really fast. You know that black, sometimes in the shower you get that little black mold? And you fight it, and you fight it, and you fight it, and you fight it. That's sulfate-reducing bacteria. Okay? Take a little vinegar and hydrogen peroxide, go in there and scrub it. It'll be gone. You get rid of it. It'll go away. You won't have to fight it, fight it, fight it. How do we fight it in the soil? Let me see if I got my pool. All right, your swimming pool. Chlorinated, city water, pH adjusted, add chlorine, circulate, backwash, turn it off for 2 weeks, and it looks like that. Where did all that, where did all that come from? All that algae and bacteria. Now, let's recover from that. Okay, I'm going to have to shock it, pH adjust it, I'm going to have to brush it, I'm going to have to circulate, I'm going to have to backwash, I'm going to have to stay on the chlorine, I'm going to have to stay on the acid, right? I may have to brush it again, eventually get that water clear, and I'm off to the races again. How are you going to do that in soil? And that's just algae and bacteria, right? That's not sulfate-reducing bacteria. How are you going to do it? Whoever told you that you needed an antiseptic in your water treatment for your soil, who even told you that you should check the bacteria and the food source of bacteria from your water? Nobody, right? But that's the reality. All right. So when plants drink, they become what they drink. So you want to feed them terrible, disease-ridden water? You're going to fight it. You're going to fight it on the other end, and you're going to reduce your crop health, your crop vitality, and your production. Plain and simple. Water is hydration. It's hydration. It's not nutrition. Okay? The water has to have available nutrition in order for it to be a nutritional drink. And that nutritional drink has to contain oxygen. It has to contain less sodium than macro and micronutrients. And that doesn't happen very often. You have to make it happen. Okay? So what's the solubility of nutrients? Oxygen, pure water, nitrate, not nitrogen. Nitrogen's not the effective form of vegetation. It's nitrate. So everybody here has seen a push of growth when it rains. Why? You get pure water, you get oxygen from the rain coming from the water, and what it does is it converts the nitrogen to nitrate. And you get this nice push. And you go, wow, that's great. A week later, things kind of not looking so good. Why? What's the next soluble thing in the soil for the plant to drink? Sodium. Okay? All wives, do you regulate your husband's intake of salt on their steak? Right? Okay? Regulate the amount of salt you put on the popcorn. Okay? Plants can't deal with sodium, plain and simple. But it's the next most available product versus pure water, oxygen, and nitrate is sodium. Okay? I'll say, yeah, but I'm flushing salts with the rain. It's a really good deal. No, you're not. The numbers are not moving. All those macro and micronutrients are still there in the same quantity. They're locked up. And they're locked up for a reason. Okay? So tilling makes available nutrition. I'm going to rip the soil apart. I get water down. Life is good. Get the same crop. Maybe a little worse, maybe a little better. Did it make available nutrition? No. Okay. Getting water down makes available nutrition? No. Okay. Is water hydration nutrition? It's hydration. Okay. When is fertilizer considered nutrition? The only way you can tell, okay, is do a tissue analysis and see what your plant drank. Okay? And when it's deficient, you go like, oh, we need to add zinc. Well, you got 75 pounds per 4 acre inch in your soil, but you want to add more. No, the problem is your plant's not taking up the zinc. Why is the zinc, which is the next soluble salt, it falls in right below the sodium? Isn't it a sacrificial anode on an outboard drive or in any type of water? Okay? So why can't I get that zinc to move through my plant? Why can't I get my copper to move through my plant? Because it's tied up. Why is it tied up? I'll show you. I'll show you. Okay? Well, so as I mentioned earlier, you never saw this coming because you looked at the water, never looked at the bacteria of the water and the food sources for the bacteria, the food sources for the bacteria. You looked at the available nutrition and the exchangeable, because the available was short, you threw more on. Okay? That exchangeable report, you need to throw it into the garbage, or when it's there with your available, just put a black line through it. Do not use it. Because what is it doing? It's saying, well, if your plant produces these acids, it could potentially make these salts available to you. The problem is that those numbers represent about 15% of what's in your soil. It's the 85% that's causing you a problem. It's called cementation. It's called cement and steel, right? Calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphate, all locked up in your soil. Iron's not coming through. There's massive amounts in there. And then you got all these micronutrients locked up. Massive amounts. When you do that total soil digestion, you go like, wow, man. And we convert the parts per million to pounds per acre, and you go, let's see, I got 30,000 pounds per acre, and I'm going to add another 1,000 pounds per acre? No, you have to have pore space. You have to have infiltration. You have to let water with oxygen, with available nutrition into that root zone so the plant can get a healthy drink. It's a Monster Energy drink. And guess what we see in tissues that are twice the size? Crops are through the roof. Guess what we see? Volume of nutritional uptake in the tissue analyses. Volume. Don't take reports with percentage. Take reports with volume. Parts per million. Okay? Don't do tissue analyses and let them give you a percentage on it. You want parts per million. Okay. So your water may be toxic, your soils may not be operating, your plants may not getting the nutritional hydration they require. And more water might be the wrong idea because your water may be mainly sodium. Okay? This is data from here. Not from here, but from this area, from this region. Okay? So this is just a snapshot of our legacy analytical log sheet, and we did the total soil digestion. Look at how many pounds per acre sample we had. 107,000 pounds of calcium. 107,000 pounds per calcium. And Scott, I'm pretty sure that you had this data run. Do we know if this was like a 12-inch sample, 4-inch sample, 16?
If it was a farmer, it was, depends on which farm, it was probably a 12.
Okay, so that would be per acre foot, 107,000 pounds of calcium. And yet you're deficient in availability and you're gonna add more. Bad idea, right? I need to make my water a better solvent to start breaking that down to move it into available nutrition, which is gonna give me that pore space. 20,000 pounds of magnesium, 13,000 pounds of potassium, and almost 3,000 pounds of phosphate. It's all bought and paid for, sitting in your soil, plugging up your soil. Okay? Then we looked at the sodium toxicity. This is on the water. Every time you watered, 80% of that water was readily available sodium for your plant to drink. 81%. If you put 81% salt on your steak, you won't even taste the steak, and your wife's going to kill you. You're going to kill yourself. She's going to kill you for killing yourself. Just as long as she's got life insurance, she's happy. So when I do a total soil digestion and break down all that calcium and magnesium, which are the two used for that, it's at 16%, which is great. But I can't do that. I can do it in the soil, but I don't want to do that in the soil. Okay? And then when I took the water through the soil and made the drink, it was 81% still. So every time I water, I'm killing stuff. Plain and simple. Wait a minute. It was all there. I could have used it, but the water wasn't capable of dealing with it. And rain wasn't. And tell me, how'd that happen? How did all that happen? Exactly what I told you. The data led you to do it. It wasn't available, add more. Well, fertilizer is not nutrition, friends. It's not nutrition. Fertilizer is fertilizer. You have to make it nutrition. And if it's accumulating in the soil, then what you're doing ain't working. Okay? So this is our baseline. Just on the macronutrients, that's our baseline. We've got to move these numbers down by making the water a better product to break that down and move it into the available nutrition. And I'm going to replenish once I get these numbers down. I'm going to consume everything I bought there and paid for. That blue box means it's biologically influenced. So the phosphorus, that big number, biology plays a big role in that. Good case in point, if you own a pool, your chlorine's not working, what do? They drop the phosphate out, filter and backwash it. Okay? Because the bacteria love that stuff. So here's the bacteria exponent. This is total soil digestion again. Look how much sulfur and sulfate I have in there. 22,190 pounds of sulfate in an acre foot. And I'm going to add gypsum. Hold on. Gypsum's calcium and sulfate. And I've got more of it in the soil than I could possibly deal with. But I'm going to add more and lower the pH. And then those numbers are going to go up more. Because my plant's going to drink 10 to 15% during that acidification reaction, and it's going to leave behind 85% that is now insoluble with more applications of sulfuric acid. So I'm truly making, what am I making? I'm making gypsum. And a denser gypsum that acid won't break down. Scott, you had a question or comment?
No, that's just one of the that's one of the low ones. Some of the stuff that when taken around here, that sulfate is up around 100,000.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's all over the map, okay? Then, look at the iron. Oops, gosh, quit doing that. Then look at the iron. 45,000 pounds of iron per acre foot. Okay? So I call it concrete and steel. Can't find much vegetation growing in concrete and steel. Okay?
Can I ask a question? Well, there are farmers that are installing those devices right out of the well. They call it water something, and they break down the water molecules and ionize it, and it goes to either the drip or the sprinklers, and they claim that they just doesn't plug with the meter.
Keyword, claim.
Right.
Claim. This is data. This is data. So keeping emitters clean is priceless, right? You got to get water out. That's great, okay? But then, what's your plant drinking? That's where you make the money, okay? So you have to get it all. You have to do it all. Well gets sick, transfers through lines get plugged, treat the lines, you're not treating the well's still getting sick because it's a growing problem. Then you throw that out on your soils, and your soils are getting sick, and then your trees are getting sick. Or your crops are getting sick, and then you're not getting the production that you want or need or should have or is available to have, right? And I'm going to blow you away with some numbers on available production increases. So I have yet to find a product or a device that is all-inclusive of the overall picture. So now there's nanobubbles, right? Or nanobubbles with hydrogen peroxide, or, you gotta look at the whole picture. And then you've gotta look at your soils. These soils have to work, right? You have to make available nutrition. The soils have to have pore space and infiltration. And that comes by the treatment of water. So you can measure the impact of those things. They had these, it changes the molecule. You can use ozone, it'll change the direction of the molecule so they won't do this, etc. Well, if it's accumulating in your soil, it ain't working. Plain and simple. There's a really simple bench test. Take some of that water from that device, treat it with that device, put it in a beaker out in the sun, and let it evaporate to dryness. Now, once it's to dryness, add some water to it and see if it resolubilizes. It won't. If it doesn't resolubilize, it's going to accumulate in your soil. It's not available to the plant, okay? And biology plays a huge role in this. Not just the minerals and the metals, but also the bacteria and their waste products plays a huge role. So acid isn't the only answer. You've got to have acid and antiseptic to make all this work. Nitrogen, we talked about nitrogen. Notice it's under oxygen. I see a lot of places that have massive amounts of nitrogen, and yet what's transferring to the soil is minimal. Did you know when you acidify nitrogen, it releases amines, and amines will actually block root zone uptake of fertilizer and oxygen? So what do? You need to acidify. You need to oxidize the nitrogen. You need to oxidize the nitrate, and you need to leave behind dissolved oxygen. And that comes from an antiseptic. Okay? That nitrogen level should never be over 40 parts per million. You don't need to load the soil with nitrogen. You need to feed it with the water. It needs to drink it on a continuous basis. Because if you overload it, you're going to stifle oxygen root zone uptake. It's crazy. And the only way to reduce it is through oxygenation, like rain, right? Convert it to the NO3. Sodium, 1190. Sodium, it's toxic. Zinc was at 188 pounds per acre foot. Sodium was 3,000 pounds per acre foot. Okay? Crazy.
Potassium, not sodium.
No, it's just in column K.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I was looking at the K, sorry.
Where's the K?
The K's above.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's column, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
You had me going. So this is the picture of all these. This is a sample, okay? How did these accumulate? How'd they accumulate, okay? And what does that mean to your soil? If you really look at these categories, cementation, I got plenty, right? I got plenty of iron. I got plenty of food sources for bacteria. So sulfur, sulfate, iron, manganese, and phosphorus. I'm feeding the bacteria. Yeah, but we want to add bacteria. Yeah, but you don't want bad bacteria and you don't want their waste products. Okay? So we have to reverse this trend. Okay? So what are you going to do to fix it? You have to have physical pore space. You have to have available nutrition. You have to have oxygen. This is kind of what our sheet looks like. You know, we'll lay out pH, the nitrogen, nitrate, the macronutrients, the bicarbonate, the sodium and chloride, and then the micronutrients, computed sodium percentage. This right here is a very simple calculation from the data you have in your hand on your water. If that number is over 40% every time you water, you're killing stuff. I say it like that. I say you're killing stuff, but you know, you're not making things better. You're making them worse. Okay? So you go home and you take your calcium, magnesium, sodium, divide it by the sodium, it'll give you your computed sodium percentage. And if it's over 40, you go, man, I need to free up some calcium and magnesium somehow, because I got to get that percentage under 40. Now you're feeding your plant, not hurting it. Okay? Sodium is the most soluble salt.
25 minutes.
Great, thank you. So this is more total soil digestions that we did on various fields, etc.
Todd, question.
Yes.
You said take calcium, magnesium, and sodium, add them together and divide them by sodium?
Right. They'll give you
It'll give you that number.
right. Computed sodium percentage. Yep.
And that's what you're saying should be under 40.
Correct.
Thank you.
So these are just more examples. It's chronic across the country. I think this was a nursery one. Yeah, this is a nursery one. Look at this, 111,000 pounds, and that was a 4-inch sample. 111,000 pounds per 4-inch sample. Okay, iron. Look at this, 280,000 pounds of iron. This is a nursery. Disease-ridden. Okay, so new and improved testing. I've covered that with you, but 99% of the time, improved testing data reveals bulk density is horrible, confining layers and toxins exist. So if you've been ripping at 18 inches, right underneath that 18 inches, you can't get a probe through it. What is it? It's actually nutrition, but it's saturated with sodium and chloride, because that's where it all collected. So you start getting your roots down there, and they're going down, they're all happy because you made all this great available nutrition. It gets down to this toxic layer and goes, oh man, this is not a good drink, this is bad. It's gonna drink it, but it's gonna come through and you're gonna see the damage. So we know, we prepare for that, because if we test for it and we know it's there, then at that treatment time, when we get infiltration down there, we have more of our sodium detoxification chemistry in the formula to detoxify it. Restricted available nutrition, limited infiltration depth, limited pore space, confining soil layers, holding toxins, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? All right, we talked about rain. This is the UC Davis study. Go to my website, type in UC Davis, you can read the whole report. This is why sulfurous acid products fail, because of the evaporative salts that become insoluble and collect in the soil. And there's a lot of sulfur, there's a lot of nitrogen in that product, and black layer, stinky, rotten egg smelling, stinky feet smelling matter They call it black layer. The technical term for it is sulfate-reducing bacteria. It's bacteria that feeds on sulfur and sulfate. No big deal. Eat all the sulfur and sulfate you want. The problem is that it produces a waste product. Guess what the waste products are? Sulfurous acid. Great, love it. Scavenges oxygen. That's not good. Produces water and releases hydrogen sulfide gas. So that's what your plant takes up. Hydrogen sulfide gas is the same gas that will kill a man in a manhole, right? It's death. So you have those areas where standing water and the soil's kind of looking yucky and mucky. It's a noxic soil. It's death. Plants will not grow there. That transfers into your plant. That causes the need for fungicides and causes the need for a lot of different things. And it's a booger to fight. You know, you fight it in your bathroom, in the cracks and crevices of your shower all the time until you give it the right medicine. If you get rid of the host, it ain't coming back. But if you just work on the surface, it's going to grow back. Okay? It almost ruled the world. There's an article about it in National Geographic. It's called Carl Sagan's New Guy. He talked about when a meteor hit the earth and it clouded the skies and the earth almost went anoxic due to sulfate-reducing bacteria. And I can share, it's called the Cosmos, okay? And I think it's the second one. Happy to share it with you. That show actually put me onto the antiseptic years ago. It's crazy. Okay. Soil's a filter. Everybody agree? You're out in the woods, there's the creek, you need a drink, forgot your canteen, filter the water, drink it, right? So, who changes a gas filter on their truck, or has it changed? Who changes the filter on your refrigerator potable water, right? Who backwashes the filter on their pool? Soil's a filter. It's going to filter everything. And then it can go anoxic. So you have to manage the filter. You didn't know you needed to manage the filter because you never did the test. You never knew you had all that fertilizer accumulating in your soil and not transferring to your roots for uptake. Okay. So I'm going to share this with you. My art of available nutrition is pretty unique. So if I have soluble salts in the water, if I put them out and evaporate them to dryness, they're going to crystallize. They're going to form a hard water spot on your truck, right? And sometimes those hard water spots are hard to get off. If you'd have wiped it when it was wet, no big deal, right? But you got a hard water spot. That hard water spot accumulates in the soil. And we put millions of acre feet of water on the soils, so we get all these hard water spots accumulated, etc. So what I do is I go in there and I say bicarbonate, chloride, anion-cation attraction, that little magnetic plus minus. I go, you're not playing anymore because I'm going to sequester these minerals and metals. And what does sequester mean? It means that that element will not participate in another chemical reaction. So I just made a soluble salt stay soluble. But the soil is a different story. I have all these crystals of fertilizer locked up with bicarbonate, chloride, and valence. So what I have to do is I have to use a strong acid, not lowering pH, but ionization potential to disassociate those complexes and then sequester the minerals and metals. Now they're drinkable. So if you take that beaker with my treated water and put it out in the sun, evaporate to dryness, you can get powder. Add water, it'll rehydrate. Let it evaporate to dryness again. Take that powder out, completely dissolve it in your hand, just from the moisture of your hand. Because they're dissolved solids. It's EC, it's TDS. It can never become a carbonate salt again. Okay? That's drinkable. EC and TDS is drinkable. Chelated salts are not nearly as drinkable as salts that are converted into what is technically called a quasi-acetate. Okay? And it's quasi because there's other chemical reactions going on there. But that's one part of the equation. That's the minerals and metals. What about the biology? Okay? Bacteria will form toxins, but they will also form and encapsulate minerals and metals. And sometimes that acid, any acid, will not get to those minerals and metals to dissolve them because bio has blocked it. You've got to get through the bio. Okay? And so hydrogen peroxide, along with hydrochloric acid, will break down that biofilm and let that acid get in there, and everything is good.
And the reason for that is because it's polysaccharide. Explain.
Yeah, so you guys have seen iron slime in places. You know, it's red bacteria and it's slimy. You saw it on the pool, right? You shock it, but you still got to brush that stuff free. That peroxide will go through it better than WD-40. But we catalyze the peroxide with the hydrochloric, and it's like nuclear. It's better than biosafe, biosand, bio anything. It's basically a perchloric acid, and it's just nuclear. Total game changer.
But
And it leaves behind dissolved oxygen.
so you can't get to what's in the soil though, because these slimes, which are polysaccharides, are blocking.
Yeah.
And so we break those slimes down, which are negative. Then we can get to the nutrients.
Then the acid gets to the carbonate, chloride, and the valence bonds. Yep. Yep. And those are permanent conversions. Okay, I have to move fast. Oh, so if you buy, let me get to that slide. You ever seen 200,000 TDS water? There you go. It's all nutrition, unless it's all salt. Okay. Would you believe that 2 of these little 275 gallon totes replaces that 5,400 gallon tank of sulfuric acid? That's shocking. Why? Because I'm ion exchange. I'm not just adding hydrogen to dissolve salts that 80% of the salts are going to recomplex. I'm creating a conversion. So I don't need as much. Okay? And I'll even break down the salts that this product created that it didn't drink. Harvest your nutrition. And I put my hand in it and dissolve seashells at the same time without any effect. Won't hurt me. I've got videos online, and I'd love for you guys to go to my website and go to the YouTube channel. The first 2 videos where I'm comparing sulfuric acid and our acid. And the sulfuric acid, in the presence of steel, iron, and calcium, it would dissolve the steel, it would dissolve the iron, but it would not dissolve the calcium. I would not dissolve the steel, I would dissolve the iron and dissolve the calcium. That's a big deal. It's a really, really big deal when you think of what plants need and you look at your soil data, you go, wow, yeah, it is kind of, thank you. Okay. This was a deposit that came from a nursery that a guy bought, and he's got plugged emitters everywhere. So we ran it in our acid, it left matter. We ran it in our biocide, it left matter. We ran it in our acid and biocide, and what did we make? EC, TDS, nutrition. Okay? And those were big flakes. You know, that's matter, but it's still matter. If I put that on the soil, what am I doing? I'm plugging my filter. Okay? If I dissolve it all into TDS and EC, then that's soluble, flushable, drinkable. So this is what happens when I say that your world's going to change, because you're going to water to water. You're not going to water to flush. You're going to water to water. And that's a minimum of 15% less water. Minimum. Annual water demand. Yes, sir.
So a water sample after treatment shows increased TDS.
It'll show a little bit. So great question. So I've had guys go, well, you know, we added sulfuric acid and the pH came down like no other, and we added your product and the pH didn't come down hardly. Well, I never knew that we could sell pH to feed a plant, right? We apply pH based on this hypothesis that if you lower the pH, you'll make more available nutrition. Great, you do, but you're killing your soil. Okay? Sequestration is really cool, because what it's saying is if I add this chemical, almost irrespective of pH, almost, it's still, I have to add enough chemistry to have pH below 8, I can create that sequestration. And so those nutrients will always stay readily available for drinkability. And I think I show that in the next slide. I'll show it to you in a slide. So I just put 2 chemical formulas on, an antiseptic, an acid. Ag production up 18 to as high as 70%. I had a strawberry agronomist call me, he goes, we got issues. I go, what? He goes, I got to find 70% more boxes for my strawberries. Why? He goes, I can only get 2. I can only get 2 in my hand. I only get 30% in a box. Nuts, garlic, onions, usually 20%, potatoes, 50%, citrus and grapes, 40 to 60%. Increase in production. Why? Because the plant got to drink what it needed to drink when it drank. That's why. Okay. Bad water and soils made valuable. Harvest accumulated, paid for fertilizer. Unprecedented growth rates. I've had 2-year grapevines that produce full production in the second year. 2 years old. The growth rate is unbelievable. Less heat stress, so a lot of crop growers for cotton and alfalfa and stuff, they go through heat stress. They don't get the production. Not anymore. Plant doesn't even know it's summer. 15% less water, almost guaranteed. More pest resistance, less disease, money ahead, ROI right away. ROI reports go from making double the amount of money that they spent on our program to as much as 15-fold. Okay, I won't get into this. This is a golf course in Texas where we restored their green infiltration. That's anaerobic bacteria. In 12 days, we removed that much black matter. In 12 days. We treated it every other day for 12 days. Every other day, so 6 days over 12 days. And moved that much black layer. And we got to test this because they were rebuilding the greens because of it. We could have cleaned it for a fraction of the price. 24-year-old greens, and they're as good as new because they use our chemistry. That's that 2 strawberries per hand. This was one of our first deals that we did probably 8 or 9 years ago. Grapes went from grade 3 to grade 1, 1,700 to 2,500 boxes per acre. They were 2-clip bundles. We saved them on harvesting. Clip, clip, done. And best grapes in that valley in 20 years, according to the harvester. I could go on for hours. Okay. So we've done all these things. It's all on our website. Our website is loaded. Okay, so at your leisure, your time, send your agronomist, trusted advisor to it, etc. It's all there. I can click on something and send you a link, so it's easy for me. There's videos, there's topics, there's images, everything you can think of. There's science tests that are shown, and then there's very detailed information on our wells. And the reason I do that, guys, is the source is where you're getting the water. And you want to look at that. We have a very simple interactive thing, just like looking at total soil digestion. If I do a water well analysis on your well, and you give me the data on your well, I can tell you what's going on with that well. And how many people have had a well rehab done? They said, well, we're just gonna brush and bale it. Bad idea. You're spreading bacteria throughout the well. You get short-term relief, but you get premature death. Okay? Or they're gonna go, well, we'll throw some descaler down there. Well, there's no scale down there, dude. If the water says there's no scale down there, there's no scale down there. It's all biologically compromised. You need a biocide, not descaler. And you guys that lay up your wells, I'll tell you a secret. Put a half a bag of sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, down the well, and the bacteria won't grow anymore. You pump that right through your lines when you fire up the well again. Okay? Serious. Don't use sodium silicate and all the other stuff they've told you about. Baking soda and water. And then I had a problem putting size matters on a chart, but I finally figured it out. Particle size does matter. Okay? So this is an osmotics chart of the size of elements. Okay? And if you look at that and think, okay, plants drink and they drink through their roots. If I get under a microscope and I look at the pore space of the root, how am I going to get silica into that hole? I did this study with the University of Arizona years ago. How am I going to get a silica element this big as amorphous silica through a hole that's that big? It ain't going to happen. Why do we spend $40,000 to try and see if you could do that when you can tell you can't do it? Okay, so So this will show you, you know, you can look at colloidal silica and what the size is. You can look at the metal ion and what the size is. So what size does something need to be for a plant to drink it? Well, we know that oxygen has really no size and plants drink it pretty well if it's available, right? Water, unless it's hard, you'll drink the water but not the hardness. So anyways, that's why I have that for you, just so you can reflect on that. And I think that's it.